Hey, it's Sonia, and welcome to the Marta podcast. Hi, and welcome back to the Marta podcast. I am beyond delighted to offer you today's conversation filled with actionable steps that you and I can take today to make tomorrow a better place. As a human stepping into the world of tomorrow's unknown, I am positive that with today's episode, it can impact you as much as it impacted me. I have Sangeeta's book here, What Will Your Legacy Be? I just wanted to start off this episode saying a couple of quotes from the book since it actually arrived after the recording, not before. And now that I have a chance to sit and tell you what a beautiful collection of information that is striking and calling me to take action and act as a shocking realization and a wake-up call to the generation of today that really needs to become more conscious about our behavior. Before I introduce the guest, as I usually do, I just wanted to take a moment and introduce Sangeeta's book, What Will Your Legacy Be? It actually arrived after I finished the recording, and so I wanted to take a moment here before you get to tune into the wisdom and the inspiring messages that she said that made me strive to take more action into my daily habits and my daily routines and how much of an influence those would have. I wanted to tell you a couple of quotes that I think set us on for today's discussion perfectly. What Will Your Legacy Be is a book about conscious global conversations and learning from others. But beyond most, what I found most valuable is that the book includes a series of 36 conversations with relevant personalities focused on the central themes of the climate crisis, sustainability, and their legacy. My experience reading this book, I just finished it an hour ago, and with all the information that still lays fresh in my mind, I wanted to tell you the empowering messages that I've read across the ending of the conversations that Sangeeta had with multiple founders, CEOs, including Ricky, which was a third-time Grammy Award winner. What I found most empowering were these conversations with all of these leaders. Messages out there to the world in reply to Sangeeta's question, what will your legacy be? And my favorite quote is, I'm just going to read you this passage here. Can everyone make a difference? Can one person make a change? Everyone thinks that they are small. They can't create change in the world. Yet they have the power if they want to have the power. Everyone can start change in their local communities. Everyone can make change by saying something instead of being quiet. People should speak up and find the positives. So instead of saying, why are you flying on your vacation? Look for the positive. And if someone says, to the train, applaud them. Make people feel comfortable. Don't create negative feelings. I believe we need positive power, and I would like to see a climate movement embracing positive feelings. We need to use the power of positivity to mobilize people. In order to really make things happen, we need leadership for sure, but we also need people power. I'm focusing on igniting a positive movement out there because that is what the climate movement is missing. The quote is so profound. And through all of my experience reading the book in terms of science, global leadership, media, food, art, and music, this book tackles way beyond just the scientific side and the historical side of climate change. It addresses today's issues. Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Sangeeta Waldron, who also very kindly signed my book here. I have really enjoyed getting over her journey over the years of writing this book. And now let's introduce her for you, shall we? Sangeeta is an award-winning public relations professional, ranked at number 25 in the top 100 of the PR Influencer Index, and the founder of Serendipity PR Media, which she established in 2009. With a remarkable career that began writing speeches for former UK Prime Minister and ministers, Sangeeta has worked with some of the most powerful global brands and organizations, including the Economist Group, the Cabinet Office, WHO, UN, The Times, Mayor of the London, and many more. Sangeeta is also an accomplished author, with her first book, the PR Knowledge Book, published in 2019, and her latest work, Corporate Social Responsibility is Not Public Relations, making waves in the world of business and sustainability. Today, we'll be diving into her newest book, What Will Your Legacy Be?, which is a thought-provoking guide that explores how we can build meaningful legacies through our work, values, and everyday actions. Beyond her professional achievements, Sangeeta is a firm believer in the power of serendipity, those unexpected moments that can shape careers and businesses. She regularly writes for international platforms and sustainable business practices and serves on various brands, including the UK Task Force for Women in Enterprise. I think this beyond sets you on for today's discussion with Sangeeta. So without further ado, here it is. Sangeeta Waldron, welcome to the Smarta family. It's great to have you here.
I'm very pleased to be with the Smarta family. Thank you for having me.
It's honestly a pleasure. All right, here's where I want to take you first. Here on the Smarta family, we always start off with you talking directly with the person listening. So if you could go ahead and do that, what are the top 3 advices that you would give them from everything that we're going to talk about today?
So my top 3 takeaways are: number 1, everyone can make a difference. No matter who you are, where you live in the world, you can make a difference. Number 2, the climate crisis is real. Number 3, always fact check everything, because we live in an age of misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. So know what you are reading.
Yes. And informing yourself onto really the real story, the real side of the story, because often it's not only misinformation, it's just one side of the story exaggerated to show you the worst side of it or to conceal the true story of what's going on. And I also believe that everyone can make a difference. I really stand by it. Every single person counts to the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead first because I want to talk about your book. What will your legacy be? Apart from the huge and amazing lineup of personalities and change makers that you have, from Julian Lennon to Dr. Kimberly Miner, I want to give you a challenge. So here's what I mean by that. I'm giving you a minute to persuade the listener as to why they should read your book. So that's 60 seconds to describe why your book is a must read for anyone from college to already in the workforce.
Challenge accepted. Let's see if I can do
Let's
this.
go. 3, 2, 1. I'll give you a moment to prepare and go.
Okay, so I've written this book for everyone. I've written this book whether you're 11 years old or you're 80 years old. And it's a book to inspire everyone. It's a book to say that there is hope in the world to make change. There are the solutions for the climate crisis. And I've also written this book in a very special way. So apart from the conversations in the book, where it's not just big, well-known change makers, but people living amongst us, everyday grassroots heroes, you can read the book. You don't have to go from chapter 1 to the end. You can read it serendipitously. So let the book talk to you. You can open it up, and wherever that book opens, that is where you're meant to be that day. And at the end of every book, there's a tip, a very simple thing that you can do. Things that I can do. If I can do it, you can do it. That's the way I've approached it. And it's a choice. You can do it or you don't have to do it. And the themes in the book cover from everything from science to music to art to food to the ocean to global communities to leadership to business. And I've probably forgotten a few there, but there is something for everyone. So that's my pitch.
There it is. That's 1 minute why you should read What Will Your Legacy Be? You know what I love most about it? I think it's one of the most valuable things that I look up to is when a book at the very end of a chapter has those tips, has those actionable steps that you can take. Because I'm a firm believer that if you really read a lot of books, and particularly self-help, personal growth, or about business and the world around you, so you know what's going on and you're active in the trends that are ever changing nowadays, you can really inform yourself and increase your knowledge, not only, but your lexicon and your way of thinking, which is what I want to focus next, which is my question for you now is, were there any particular stories or insights from these contributors that deeply resonated with your core values, your goals, and has absolutely shifted, let's say, your perspective on climate change?
Yeah. So I would say every conversation I had, at the end of every conversation, I felt inspired myself, and I felt privileged to have that conversation with different people. There are so many people out there doing amazing things. And
Mm-hmm.
what I learned, what really changed my perspective. So the book is called What Will Your Legacy Be? So
Mm-hmm.
it's thinking about what legacy do we want to leave for the planet? And one of the things that really kind of struck me by the time I came to the end of writing this book, which took me a year and a half, is that legacy is now no longer what we need to be thinking about as we get older. Normally we think, oh, we're getting older now.
Mm-hmm.
What do we want to leave for the next generation? Sadly, it's no longer that way. It starts from as young as probably when you're 14. From the moment you can make an informed choice and decision for yourself, that's when your legacy is starting, because that's where your footprint is starting now for the planet. So do you want to be remembered for that fast fashion top that's going to take over 100 years to biodegrade in landfill? That'll be your legacy. That top will outlive you. Or do you want to be remembered for something a little bit, whatever that might be, that you have made a contribution to the planet in a meaningful way?
I just want to feel like I need to repeat what you just said for the person listening, because I think it's crazy. I know all of the talk about climate change and really the urgency that we have among changing, let's say, the pathway of it. But you've drawn my attention to the fact that it's no longer about legacy as we know it when we're close to an elderly age after let's say we've retired.
Be careful what you mean by elderly there.
Yeah, I really need to specify. But I'm going into,
I'm teasing you.
but really we've taken it down to an age that's way before 18. That's already you in high school. That's already you in school, and that's already you in class thinking about no longer the shopping sprees that you'll go on, but actually your future, because it will have an impact on your future. And so I wanted to bring you back to the actionable steps in your book, which I absolutely, I'm with you 100% on this one. And that's really about the people that can use this actionable tips and this information to change their lives if we're talking it at a scale so big. So, as you said, it can start from 14, as early as 14. So, really, when you start being a rational thinker, that's boom, the moment you have to start thinking about the impact that you're making for the world. Now, I'm 17 and I'm already intrigued by everything that you've just told me. And I want to know what a person my age can do to start implementing a more sustainable lifestyle in my life.
Yeah. So when you're 17, wow, the world is exciting. The world is before you. Do you know, you want to live life. So you want to live it well. So the little things you can do. So very simple thing. Brushing your teeth in the morning. Don't let the tap run. Water is a precious commodity. We've seen it this year in LA. There wasn't
Mm-hmm.
enough water
Yes.
to put out the fires. When you're young, you want to go to a music festival. You want to travel. think about the best way you can get to that music festival. You don't have to drive there. You can get public transport. Music festivals now are really conscious about how they are attracting their audience, and they're also trying to keep their own carbon footprint down. So travel by public transport. You're going to school or college every day. Don't buy bottled water. Take your refillable, usable bottle and fill it at school. You want to go to McDonald's? Go to McDonald's. But don't throw your rubbish. Don't just litter. Take
Mm-hmm.
your rubbish home or throw it in a bin. I've seen so many young people just sadly littering, and that is bad for the environment. Why? Because birds pick it up, birds choke on that. So these are the simple things that we can all do. And if you want to go one step further, or maybe two steps, let's go two steps.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, I'm not saying become vegan, don't give up meat, but just try and do 1 day a week will make a difference. And the second idea is when you're young, you love to be out, connect with nature. When you connect with nature, not only is it good for your own mental well-being, your mental health, but it connects you to nature. And then you'll think, okay, maybe I'm not going to drop that piece of litter. Maybe I'm not going to pick up a plastic bottle from the shop. I'm going to, it just makes you feel more connected. And there's nothing more empowering than being connected to nature. I was 17 once, and
Mm-hmm.
I always say nature saved me.
Yeah, I truly stand you with that because at least for me, especially now, Romania was very sad as a weather. It snowed a lot and we barely saw the sun for quite some weeks. And now the sun is shining and I was just thinking on my way to school in the bus, actually, I do always
Good.
opt for the bus.
Yeah.
I was just thinking how beautiful it is to feel that sunshine caress my body in the morning. It truly makes me wake up better. And connecting with nature doesn't only help you feel better, but it makes you feel more productive. And if, let's say, we want to take it to a more exaggerated point, that will help you make more wise or better decisions when it comes potentially to your plans, your behavior, when, as you said, it comes to eating out, perhaps considering new trends for your wardrobe. And I want to say 1 day a week with opting for, let's say, plants, vegetables, dairy with no meat is very doable. I don't know for the person listening, but I was a very strong believer in having a day full of vegetables or a day full of the same fruit and then a day only of dairy. So, in terms of meat, for me, I want to eat it and consume it when it's good and more rarely to do so. So I'm not a vegan or vegetarian, but I feel like I truly embrace it or savor it more when it's in a little portion. And I want to take you back in time now. I've already made you think when you were 17. So my question for you now, Sangeeta, is if you could tell your 17-year-old what would it be?
Really good question. I think it would be, Sangeeta, forget about what others think about you.
Mm-hmm.
Just do you. And you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I think at 17, I was full of angst. I I I was born here in the United Kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
lived here till the age of 14. And then at the age of 14, my world was turned upside down because my parents decided to live in India, which was a completely different country, different language, different culture. And when you're 14, 15, you're just discovering yourself, and you already have a set idea of what you want to do, where you want to be. I had my own reference points of music, TV, film. And so all that was turned on its head. And I remember just feeling very lost at that time. And it was I struggled. But the best thing I did for myself every day, I would go for a walk. And I would go into the forest because we lived in the Himalayas, and I would just go and walk for an hour and just be with myself and just be in nature. And I think during that time when I was walking, I was manifesting. I was imagining what my life could be like, where I could be, what I could do. And I already had in my head, I was going to leave home and I was going to come back to the UK. And that's what I did when I was in my 20s. I left home. I said to my mum, I've done everything that's expected. I'm now leaving. And I came back. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. And without making those mistakes, you never learn. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a really, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And so, yes, I feel now the 17-year-old me, she would be very proud.
Lovely. That's really nice, especially since I think everyone struggles with overthinking or worrying about really when you look back in the past, useless or careless things that didn't matter in terms of thinking about what others think. And when you let go of that, I feel like you can truly just unlock your full potential and think about you and just you, because in the end, you're the one that's going to be able to make a change, and you're the one that's going to be there with you when no one
Yeah.
can. So I've watched one of your YouTube videos before. I've done my homework, I've done my research, and you said that at the age of 10 to 11, you joined your first Greenpeace conference in the UK, becoming this little activist on the ground. And I want to link that with my question about many young people searching their path, their mission, and including students and early career professionals that want to make that difference but don't know how. So, my question is, what would the first step be in making a difference, in making an impact?
So I joined Greenpeace. There was this ad in the paper where they
Mm-hmm.
were looking for their first, their junior reporters on the
Mm-hmm.
ground. And I signed up. It's a little coupon. You wrote your name, where you lived, and you posted it off, and I got the kit. That was my first introduction into doing something for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the main thing is I love to write. Growing up, that was the way I would escape, writing and reading. So find the thing that gives you passion. Is it dancing? Is it listening to music? Is it writing lyrics? Is it sport? Even, is it experimenting in your wardrobe? Whatever that might be, whatever is your thing, love it, embrace it, escape in
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do that, and I know this sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's not. Things will just open up. And if you're open to conversations, if you're open to, you know, being authentic with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the dots starting to join up. Things will come your way. You'll see something, you'll read something. I mean, I was 10. I wasn't sitting there like reading the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I was a 10-year-old, but I just happened to see that. And I thought, oh, I love to write. I wanted to be a journalist at that time. I wanted to be many things. I wanted to be a journalist, or I wanted to be an archaeologist or a writer. That was what I wanted to do when I was 10, and act, right? Thought, okay, acting is not going to be possible, but I can be I love writing, and that's what I did. I joined up. So seize the opportunity. Don't let that little doubt stop you from doing things, because you just don't know where it's going to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that even now, even if it seems like completely improbable, it will never come my way, I'll still try for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because in the end, putting it down from your head to paper really gets that thought out. I mean, it lets you more relieved, and like you can finally breathe and think about the real problem and see actually what matters, what doesn't matter, what's in your head, what was just circulating around. And I want to link this actually because you said you wanted to be a writer, that you loved writing. It was your way of really escaping or letting go. So, one of the things that you do is as a service is help authors and books gain visibility. My question for you now is, what are some key strategies that you would recommend for authors looking to build their personal brand and promoting their book?
That's a really good question. And I mean, you're of a generation where you've grown up with social media.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
unfortunately.
yeah, I think we've had the best days where it's been
Mm,
easier. But there is an upside to social media. It's a great tool. It's a great tool for promoting your book. And I work with so many authors who are not using social media. They're using it. Well, some of them are not even on social media. So if you're not on there, how are
get on.
you going to, yeah, how are you going to connect with your reader?
Mm-hmm.
And we live in an age where we want to be connected. We want to be connected to the person behind the film, behind the music, behind the book. So be online. Don't be invisible. And, talk about your book, but don't just talk at people. Be engaged, share information, share knowledge, share other people's work. That's also, I believe the social media or the internet is a great tool for also paying it forward. If you
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of thought process of paying it forward, it'll return to you. So lots of authors I work with, well, when I start working with them, you can't find them, and that's no good.
Yeah.
You've got to be online.
Mm-hmm. If you look them up and there's no result, that takes you a step lower into, I would say, credibility, but not necessarily also accessibility. Because one of the best things for me is, especially when I'm doing podcasts and I'm let's say daring to invite people that I think are so far into their career and loving what they do, like you, and I'm able to find more about their work. I'm able to see, let's say, now when I was writing the questions, what really interests me about you. I had that opportunity to know you, I get to know you virtually as a person, and now I'm getting to talk to you and find out more and for you to answer my questions. So I think we've talked about don't be afraid to make mistakes. Let's expand on that, and particularly in what are some common mistakes that authors make when it comes to marketing their books?
So I think some authors, well, they won't have any visibility online,
Mm-hmm.
first of all. And then I have worked with authors that they're about to launch their book, right? It's going to be published. Say it's going to be published tomorrow. But they decide to go on holiday. Why are you going on holiday when you're just about to launch your book? You
Wow.
need to be present. Yeah. You put all this work and effort in. So don't just kind of disappear. So so think about your book. Think of it as your baby. You want to
Mm-hmm.
invest as much as you can into your work. Be proud of your work. Talk about your work. Don't be afraid to talk about it. And, you spent time on this book, so give it some love. Don't
Mm-hmm.
just disappear on it. So I think that, authors make different, so I think sometimes authors feel challenged. They feel they've done the hard work. Yes, they have, but that's just half of that journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more to do. And be prepared. But you'll have to write articles for magazines. You'll have to turn up for podcasts. You'll have to turn up for speaking events. But that's the fun part. Have fun with it. I don't see it as a chore or don't see it as another thing to do. It's not. It's great to have that energy and put that
Mm-hmm.
energy into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that would be my advice.
And it definitely is, because my experience as a published author is realizing that actually writing the book and finishing the manuscript is only just the beginning.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. Once you're about to launch it, that's where you actually, it becomes part of you. It becomes a part of who you are because you remember why you wanted to write it in the first place. And if, let's say, that information was valuable to you, that's why I'm also with what you're saying here about building your visibility, because you want to show it to your community. Because if you felt like what you wrote about is so important, then the others around you deserve to put the attention to find out what it is that you're so passionate about as well. And so getting to tell it to other people around you is the fun of it, because that will give you, as you said, that invitation at the speaking gig, that invitation on the podcast. And really, I think it's a lot so empowering to just see that people are reading your work, are knowing or see your work. And I think really the best place to start is to look at it as a journey. And so one of your, let's say, values or questions that got you thinking was, how can I make a difference? You said these exact words, and I thought it was so empowering that I just had to say it, because in this world of hyperconnectivity, let's call it, it's so easy to look down upon the impact that you can make as an individual, since it seems like there's so many people nowadays doing so many different things, that you actually can also have that impact on the community that others are having. And so my question for you now is for debut authors, debut novels, new authors just entering this world of literature, especially those without that visibility, without, let's say, the social media part or a large platform. What practical steps can they take to really create that hype that my book is about to launch, it's 3 months away, and connect with their community that they want, their target audience?
Yeah, so I think speak to your publisher as well, connect with your publisher, work closely with your publisher and the team at the publishing house. And, there's nothing like your friends and family to support you. They're going to be your biggest cheerleaders. So ask them, help me get the book out. Let them be your team. Work with them. They are your team. Go to your local bookshop, ask them whether they'll support you as a local author. If your book is related to a particular community issue, go and speak to those organizations, go into schools, share your time, do a class, do a speaking gig at your local school. They're they love people coming in and talking to students. Put your book, this is where you'll have to work with your publisher, but put your book into a school library. Do talks with different local organizations. Speak to your local newspaper. There are so many things. A lot of the big national headlines start from local communities, local newspapers. So don't be sniffy about it, or, it's just local. Everything starts local. And if you love your local community, you're invested in your local community will really get behind you.
I agree. And now that, let's say if the listener was thinking about publishing a book, or they already have a done manuscript and they were thinking about marketing, and they clicked on this episode because they thought, how do I make it successful? How do I know to take the right steps? I want to take you on a different path, since I think they got their sort of call to action, what they need to get to do. And so the other direction where I want to take you in now is your successful PR agency and your industry in that, and your experience in that. So in what part particularly I'm referring to is what caught my attention, which is the projects that you worked on with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Liam Neeson, Cary Grant, Donna Karan, just to name a few, and ask you about what your experience was like working with them, and what steps you did after, since 2009, when you launched the agency, to really take it into such a enriching and thrilling, successful point where you are at today.
So a lot of those celebrities some of them were at events that I was at, and I had, the networking opportunity. Some of them, they were part of events that I was organizing. So it's a cross section. So working with celebrities is never easy. So first of all, that, you've got to be on the ball, and you've got to be very specific of what you want the celebrity to do.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think in this time, so the world has changed dramatically, right?
So much.
And so much. And social media has changed that completely. And even now, it's turning on its head. So sometimes working with celebrities is not the best thing for your brand, because they're also people. They also make mistakes that might reflect on your brand. So I think sometimes it's just knowing what is it you're trying to achieve. And it doesn't always have to be a celebrity. And I think the most important thing, and it was something I consciously decided when I set up my own agency in 2009, was to make sure my storytelling was always authentic. I think that's really important. That you're always going to try to have integrity
Mm-hmm.
with the projects I was working on. So sometimes the projects didn't feel right to me. So I would say, it's not for me. It didn't fit with my values or how I wanted to tell that story. So I think authentic storytelling is so important, because then people they know, they know that they can trust you.
Mm-hmm.
The media knows they can trust you. You're not gonna sell them a bad story, and that you're working with integrity. And then also people get to know, the clients get to know, okay, this person's going to work on my brand, or whatever it is, my campaign, and it's going to be one that's going to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, even now, right now, especially right now, because we have AI coming into the mix. So I think authentic storytelling is key.
I want to dive deeper into that. And if you can tell me either a story or something that really stood out in terms of your experience in learning to have integrity, in learning to be an authentic storyteller.
It's not always easy, because people don't always like the truth. That people have
Yeah.
got their own definitions of what they think is the right path. So you've got to know yourself, and this is something I kind of live by. If I can't put my head on my pillow at night with a clear conscience, then that's not, I'm not living my truth. And I had the privilege to work in South Africa when it used to be called, when COP was called something else. It was called the People's Summit. That's how far back I'm going. And I had the opportunity to work with shamans. So shamans are, they are, what would you, they also call themselves witch doctors, so they work with nature and the plants, and they also can forecast your future by throwing the bones. So they work with animal bones to forecast. And I remember I was with this very well-known shaman, and I thought, I want to make most of my time with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to him, what is the best piece of advice you can give me as I go out into the world? Because I was young. And he said to me, always stand in your truth. And it's hard to stand in your truth. You can tell the truth, but to stand in your truth is not easy. So I took that, and that has been part of what I've used in my storytelling, in my brand storytelling.
And I really like that, because it's very often hard to remember who you are and to stand in your story when there's so many factors around you that, let's say, are challenging who you are, challenging what you do in your daily life. So I wanted to bring you an attention to something that just, like, ever since you've said it, the CSR, which is corporate social responsibility, which I don't know much about. And I think it's one of those more intimidating terms that actually you encounter very frequently. And if you could go ahead and explain it, to what it means, what is its importance with a college student that has somewhat knowledge of the world around them, but perhaps not specific terminology.
Yes, so corporate social responsibility, or CSR, is basically just about a business doing better. Doing better by the local community it operates in, doing better by the planet, doing better with its customers. It's just about doing better and doing it well and doing it authentically. All the things I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And, these days we hear a lot about companies or brands greenwashing.
Mm-hmm.
Greenwashing means they're pretending to do the right thing. They're
Mm-hmm.
pretending that we're organic. They're pretending that they are looking after the planet because they're not, because they're wrapping everything in plastic. Or
Mm-hmm.
they're pretending that their supply chain is credible and it's not, because somewhere down the line there might be children working on that £5 t-shirt or $5 t-shirt. So your $5 t-shirt is $5 for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody is doing a lot of sweat or is in bonded labor for that $5 t-shirt. So it's up to us to ask the questions. Don't just take everything at face value. If you're shopping, vote with your wallet. Don't just give your money to any brand. Find out what that brand is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be loyal to that brand, then that brand deserves your loyalty. Question. Be prepared to ask the questions. And if you go into a shop and you say, "Hey, why is this £5?"
Mm-hmm.
Ask the shop assistant, and they don't know. Then it's their job to find out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate social responsibility has all fancy names. People like to dress it up in different things. Basically, it's just about doing better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. And I knew about your green hushing way that the term green hushing from the video that I said I watched earlier. And I think I want you to give your opinion on this, since the growing trend of companies staying silent on sustainability can actually lead them to exactly what they're not trying to achieve, which is having the negative light shine upon them. So there was a HSBC social media campaign that was trying to show them to become more sustainable, and it totally backfired since they found out that they were totally invested in fossil fuels. Why do you think transparency is key in terms of being more sustainable, being more environmentally friendly, in terms of a
Yeah, so I mean that's actually a really good example. HSBC and money being invested, or that fossil fuels were investing in HSBC, or which way round. So fossil fuels is a whole subject in itself.
Mhm.
But fossil fuels is all about petroleum. And petroleum is found, believe it or not, in plastic. So plastic bottles are made from petroleum. So fossil fuel companies have a vested interest in governments because they want all those laws made in their favor.
Mhm.
So a lot of people around the world right now sitting in power have been funded by fossil fuel companies. That's why it's up to us to know the facts, dig deep, understand the issue. And so why is it important? For exactly that. If you're voting for somebody, you need to know who's funding their campaign. Is it the
Mhm.
dirty fossil fuel companies? And we know fossil fuels is destroying the planet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because they have to mine, they have to drill. If they're drilling in the sea, they're disturbing the ocean bed and they're disturbing the marine life. If they're drilling on land, again, deforestation, they are taking indigenous communities away from their original habitats, destroying species. Forests we know is important for us to be able to breathe. So there's a domino effect with everything. And it's so important for us to know who's funding what, because that impacts us. And the most powerful thing we can do, and it doesn't matter whether you're 17, because at some point you're going to be opening up a bank account, you're going to be
Mhm.
earning, is move your money. Know where your bank is investing and who are they funding. And if it doesn't look good like HSBC, move your money. Go somewhere where it's greener.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think this is very important and relatable since everyone has a bank account. And
Yeah.
I remember my mom was talking to me a while now about the bank account actually can be investing money in places that you don't want to associate yourself with. So it can go as easy as you owning a bank card at a bank company that is at a completely different level of core values which you have that do not match. And I think this is very important because I am fascinated. Climate change is something that is present every single day in your life, but it's also something so big that has been talked about a lot that seems we're not getting a lot of progress in, that it can get very easy to forget the tap running when you're brushing your teeth. And it's something so common that we do that actually can have a lot of people if nationwide we take those measures. So I think in that sense, your work fascinates me because it's part of something that all of us are involved in, whether we know it or not. And so with this, I want to take you into your knowledge of books and literature that you have and the Smarter Podcast traditions. And ever since I had this question, I've been asking it to everybody since I love it. I've got a bookshelf full of books behind me. And that question that I want to ask you now is, what are your top 2 books that you would say completely changed the lens of which you view your life with?
That's a really difficult question because I love a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say something before I answer this
Go ahead.
question. You said something just a moment ago which was spot on. The climate crisis underpins everything. Everything is connected.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. You've made a very important, that's a key message that everything is interlinked. So people shouldn't forget that. But going back to the books. So what books? So I found this one difficult because I have lots of books that I love. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the ones that I read when I was maybe 16, 17 that have stayed with me and they are still on my bookshelf is I love reading Thomas Hardy.
Mm.
And there's so many books there. But I think Far from the Maddening Crowd is one of my favorite books. Jude the Obscure is another one. So I like a lot of the classics because those books still talk to us, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why they're called classics, and those story themes are still running today. And my other favorite book, weirdly, is, or maybe not so weird, is Charles Dickens' David Copperfield.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I love that book is the description of the characters. And that I found growing up, and even today, some of those have imprinted on my mind. The way he wrote, and you could almost see yourself in that scene, in that being one of those characters. I used to really be immersed in those books. So those would be my 2 favorite authors and books.
So that's Far from the Crowd by Thomas
Maddening
Hardy
Crab, yeah, Thomas Hardy.
and David Copperfield by Charles Dickens.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
really bizarre.
do you know actually you're the first guest to have suggested fiction stories, in particular classics. All the rest have been suggesting business books, self-help, and you know why I think your selection of the 2 books is speaks to really everyone and it's really important because I strongly believe that the classics have those powerful morals that you encounter every single day and are just, let's say, expressed or described in a way that's more out of this world. But really, every fiction story talks about a problem that is present in our everyday lives. And what I'm thinking particularly in right now is a recent classic that I've read since I'm a little more dismissive on classics nowadays is 1984 by Animal Farm, actually, by George Orwell. And that just goes to say how fascinating it is about authors and why I think I also find myself in your work in the terms in your passion for reading?
Just say something. You've hit on something really, again, really interesting. So last week I had one of my book events at my local Waterstones, which is a bookshop here in the
Mm-hmm.
UK. And I was talking to the person who runs that store afterwards. And she was saying, because part of the conversation when I was talking about my book was about communities.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about, and I talked about young people. One of the things she said that worried her about young people coming into the bookshop is that a lot of young people, sorry, my earpods are coming out, especially young girls, they don't read the classics. And a, a lot of the way they define themselves is with romantic fantasy or fantasy
Yeah.
romance. I'm not sure what the right term is.
Yeah.
And that's what they're reading, and that's shaping their
Who they are.
view of the world. And she said she found that it worried her because these young girls were defining themselves or on this sort of fantasy romantic fiction. So I don't know enough about romantic fantasy fiction, but I will say when I was growing up, I was reading something called Mills and Boons, which my mother was, horrified. And I used to get the book and wrap it in brown paper, hide it so she'd think I'm reading something, really intelligent and whatever. So I think you go through a phase, and maybe that's a phase, but don't give up on the classics. Classics are so important. And also, what you'll notice is a lot of the classics are still being remade into modern day films.
Mm-hmm.
Those are stories that they stand the test of time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they speak to us wherever we might be in the world, whatever our circumstances might be. Those stories are universal.
Mm-hmm.
And you also said something quite interesting. Yes, I'm a non-fiction writer, but I think to engage with people, you have to think of your book creatively.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just another non-fiction book, which can be quite, I think, because I'm a reader, that can be quite dense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, making sure we are always creative is so important as writers or as anyone. When we're creative, we're at our
100%. Yeah,
yeah. So I think and books give us that joy.
they do. They definitely do. And I was just thinking about it now as you said that you've had this experience around a week ago at your local Waterstones bookshop that made me think actually how true and real that is, and how slowly but subtly almost even the literature world is changing for that the impact that the social media is having. And I happen to know a lot about romanticy fiction,
Fantasy
fantasy.
fiction.
Yeah, I'm trying also to think about what they call it now because it has a particular word that just doesn't enter my mind. And it's shaping exactly as you said the way that these women perceive their life in terms of not only romantic relationships but also how to handle situations that might be obstacles or challenging. And so thinking about it is not stepping away from the classics is so important, which makes me lead on to the next question, which is the Smart Podcast tradition. And that in particular is where I asked my previous guest to leave a question for the next one. And so my last guest, Leilani Brown, left over this question for you. What is one thing about you that would surprise most people?
Yeah. So there are quite a few. I think probably, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about this because I'm an open book,
Mm-hmm.
but I think probably what people don't realize about me is that when I went to India, I was 14 and I was too old to read and learn to read and write Hindi. So I did French. So I can't read and write Hindi. Yeah, I can speak it, but I can't read or write. So maybe people might find that interesting. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I happen to be studying French as well, so we have that in common.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I wasn't expecting you to say that. And now I started the podcast episode with you talking directly with the listener. I want to end it in the same way. So, Sangeeta, if you could talk directly with the person listening, what would be one habit or one exercise or one advice that you would tell them as parting?
I would say to anyone and everyone who's listening, you have the power to make change, not just in your local community, but in your own life. You have the power to make change. You are powerful.
You have the power to make change, and you are powerful. I have to say that again because it has such a big impact on realizing that actually, if we take a stop from our everyday life that is now and more fast paced, you can really realize that actually taking a step onto your goals in your life is making progress, and that if you start off with 7 days opting for the bus instead of driving to your workplace or to your school, you can make a difference. And just after those 7 days, I don't know about you, but I'm a very big extrovert. So by taking the public transport, I feel like I'm socializing somehow. I'm already linking myself with other people's journeys. So that's what I think I'm gonna leave as a call to action that's very simple for anyone, regardless of what point in their life is. Take the bus, take the public transport for 7 days, for the next 7 days. And
Yeah, yeah, because you know what? When you travel by public transport, you do. You start listening to other people's conversations. You start to get a
Mhm.
sense of what other people are talking about. That's great. That's great intelligence for you, you know? And also, you get to talk to people. You know, yesterday I took the bus somewhere and I just got chatting to the lady next to me.
Mhm.
And we just had this very nice conversation. So I think it makes a difference. Just traveling by public transport opens your mind up.
It does.
And you can read.
You do. And I
Yeah.
love doing that, especially when I'm taking a longer
Yeah.
journey. Sangeeta, I've had a really informative podcast because I found out what CSR means before finding out about you, before looking you up. I had no clue that it was titled like this and the impact that it could make. I didn't know that petroleum was found in plastic water bottles. And that is truly shocking for me because it goes to show how companies are trying to conceal the ugly truth and really just market it as the freshest water from the mountain, but you don't know the process behind that. So thank you so much for being on the Smarter podcast in the first place and truly opening up my, let's say, curiosity to this new side of the world that I didn't know there was so much to get into.
I've loved all your questions and I really enjoyed myself. You know, you've taken me back to when I was young, which was a nice thing to sort of reflect on. And yes, no, I've loved the conversation. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I wish you best of luck with everything new that you're going to do in your PR firm and then all things new book wise. And it's been a pleasure sitting down here and talking with you.
Thank you. And I wish you all the success. You've got your whole life ahead of you. And I wish all your listeners too
Mhm.
success in everything they go on to do.
Thank you. Wow. I am beyond excited to know that there's so much more action and hope for the future that we can take. I have been shocked, to be honest with you, about all of the information that I found out. I didn't even know that before meeting Sangeeta, as Sarah Brittle said in the book, over a third of all climate change comes from food. And as she describes it, a lot of people tend to be really surprised to find out that, including myself. I think when we really think about climate change, we think about the broadcasted media that has been shared with us online, and we step away from actually the daily behaviors and the daily actions that we take that tend to have a higher impact on what we do and on how we determine in what position the world that we live in is like. I just wanted to quickly repeat the two books that Sangeeta Waldron recommended that completely transformed the way that she has seen life. And this brings me back to her past as a avid reader and young girl that really liked writing the same as I do, which are Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy and Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. I have linked those down below if you want to get yourself a copy of those books. And in terms of my ending thoughts for you, I just want to go back to the book and tell you the last paragraph of her epilogue. The reality is that the real power lies with you. What happens next is everyone's personal responsibility, whether in business or politics, or as employees, students, parents, carers, guardians, or citizens. It is down to you and me, wherever we live in the world. So, what will your legacy be? And that just beautifully ties in to the title of the book, to every question that she has had. It feels like an empowering message that through the constant hardship and shocking reality that the book holds, and over the 36 conversations that speak the harsh truth side of today's world, her closing remarks and the constant motif about what will your legacy be, and the second meaning to legacy about not being the financial side, but actually the impact that you have and you make for tomorrow's generation, has left me feeling in a profound state. And I cannot wait for you to get your hands on this book, because it has opened my mind to today's world. And with that being said, if nobody has told you this today, I want to be the first that tells you that I believe in you and your ability to create the life of your dreams. This is Sonia Marta, and you have been listening to this Marta podcast.